Good evening. The time is now 6:30 p.m. on Monday, May 6th, 2024, and I call this open meeting of the Lexington Select Board to order. This evening's meeting will be conducted in a hybrid format via Zoom. Members of the public can view and participate in the meeting from their devices by clicking on the link posted with the agenda. Please note that this meeting is being recorded. We also are being broadcast live and for future on-demand viewing by Lex Media. All materials provided to members of this board are also available to the public. Members of the board are in person this evening. I'm Doug Lucenti, the Select Board Chair. On my right is Joe Pato. On his right is Vice Chair Jill Hay. On my left is Susie Barry. On her left is Mark Sandine. Joining us from staff this evening is Town Manager Jim Malloy and Deputy Town Manager Kelly Axtell. Joining us remotely is the Select Board Executive Clerk Kim Katzenbach. We will open the floor to general public comment during tonight's session. As we begin our public comment section, I'd like to remind everyone that we are all neighbors and we are working together in our community's best interest. I ask that all comments be made with civility and respect and without casting aspersions or references to motives. Open public comments are for items not otherwise covered on tonight's agenda. Public comments will be allowed for 10 minutes and each speaker is limited to 2 minutes. Members of the board will neither comment nor respond other than to ask clarifying questions. Remote attendees who have dialed in by telephone should press *9 to be recognized or click on the raise hand button in Zoom. If you're joining us in person, please approach the microphone. When you are recognized to speak, please state your name, address, and any relevant boards or committee affiliations. Is there anyone who wishes to make a comment on an item not covered elsewhere in tonight's agenda? Okay, seeing no one at the microphone or online, we will move on to our select board concerns and liaison reports. Colleagues, tonight we had one set of written comments from Mr. Pato in the packet. Are there any additional verbal comments from members of the board? Ms. Hay.
Just very briefly, and I apologize, I didn't submit this, but as mentioned at our meeting last week, the following morning was the Economic Development Advisory Committee, and using the outline of what the Center Committee presented to us and discussed, the EDAC is now going to meet a few more times in quick succession and come up with, an additional set of vetting and recommendations so that we will have the ability to combine both of the recommendations from the Center Committee and the EDAC, who are going to work together on this when the item comes back to us. So that's in progress. They are meeting again this Thursday morning.
Thank you, Ms. Hay. Mr. Pato?
So I'd like to expand on the written comments. My comments were about the Lexington High School Building Committee and the public meeting that occurred last week. In the written comments are descriptions of the presentation and how the public can participate in providing feedback to the town on issues about how the high school will be developed. We need to make sure everyone understands at this stage we're relatively early in the process and talking about large-scale choices like location of the target school. Would it be on existing fields, or the fields move, or would it be on footprint of parking lots, things like that, as well as the size, massing, what the general shape of the school would be like. It's not designed yet. The important thing is that the SBC, the School Building Committee, has established an online survey system to gather concerns from the community, as well as to allow community members to express their opinion on concerns that have already been mentioned. So it's a 5-point scale from extremely support to extremely oppose a particular item. And 2 items did come up during the meeting that I need the public to hear about. One was a concern over the potential cost of a field house. And a member of the public had represented that Simmons College was building a new field house for $30 million. It's important to know that the price is actually a little bit more than that, but that's for a temporary structure, not a permanent field house. So the price tags that our architects have been developing are a fair amount more than that. And the second piece was with regard to suggestions from members of the public that we just build in place on the existing high school and add levels above to expand. And the architects have told us, while they can build up, first they would have to tear everything down because the infrastructure for those buildings would not support additional levels. So that particular option is not one that's being actively pursued. Thank you. And again, the URL for the project as a whole is lhsproject.lexingtonma.org.
Thank you, Mr. Pado. Mr. Sandin? Oh, I think he did. Mr. Sandin, you have a question with, oh, Ms. Hay then.
So, Mr. Pado, can you just A, reiterate how long the survey is open for people, and then B, how to find the survey, the most easy function? Is it on the, I think it's on the homepage now, isn't it?
The survey link is on the homepage of the Lexington High School project. There are postings from the town information officer that have gone to social media that's on the town's website. I sent it out to various town email lists, but we do want to make sure this reaches as wide a public as possible. And again, the URL is lhsproject, all one word, .lexingtonma.org. Oh, and the survey is open until May 20th at May 16th at 11:59 p.m. The school building committee will be reviewing the comments on May 20th.
Thank you, Mr. Padwan. Maybe we'll put this on our agenda for next Monday, just so that we can reiterate the opportunity for people to give feedback, because I think it's important. Thank you so much for that update. Mr. Sandin?
Thank you. We've had a number of residents ask the select board if we would be writing a letter, a comment letter regarding the Hanscom Airport proposed North Airfield development, the draft environmental impact report. So I'm hoping that we can put something about the letter that the select board might be able to send on a future agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Sandin. I think you and I spoke about this, and one concept was drafting a letter that was very similar to the letter that the HATS committee sent, and maybe that if the board's amenable to that language that's in there, if it's similar to what was already sent, we could put that on a consent agenda.
Thank you very much.
And I just have one thing I want to run by the board quickly, just to get a sense of where everyone's at regarding liaison assignments. Before I have it on an agenda for us to deliberate on, I wanted to sort of get a feeling for which direction folks thought we should have with the changes in the board. So one option is that we go back to a method we used several years ago, I think, which was to rank each committee preference by each individual board member. So we take the 60 plus committees and we would rank, our preferences. We did that one time. Another option, which is the package approach, we'll call it, where we set up 4 different packages of committees that were nicely aligned with our goals, so that the committees that you were assigned would have some relationship to each other, such as Center Committee and EDAC and tourism, as an example. And option 3 is we do a light shuffle, given changes to some seats, and not do a wholesale change at this time. So I was just hoping to get a sense of the board of which direction we head in. If anyone wants to make any brief opinions. If anyone has opinions.
I'm open for a light shuffle.
Second the light shuffle.
Ms. Hay, light shuffle. Mr. Pado?
It's fine.
All right. We will approach it with the light shuffle. Thank you. That just doesn't waste everybody's time unnecessarily. Okay, thank you. Okay, Mr. Malloy, is there a town manager's report this evening?
Yes, just briefly, two items. The first is that we expect to begin milling the roads around the Battle Green this Wednesday and repaving them on next Monday, on the 13th. And then the other thing is, I just wanted to confirm that we will be having the Lexington High School Financing Summit on May 22nd. Carolyn Kosnoff asked, because I think some of the AC and the CEC have asked whether or not it would be in person, remote, or hybrid.
I would think we would do a hybrid like this meeting.
Okay.
Would probably be the best.
Okay.
Okay, our consent agenda this evening has 7 items on it. First is an application for an entertainment license from the Chinese American Association of Lexington, CAL, on the Visitor Center lawn. The second is an application for a one-day liquor license for Lab Collaborative at the Depot parking lot, 0 Merriam Street, for their barbecue festival. Next is a application for an entertainment license for Lab Collaborative for the Lexington Barbecue Festival. Next is an application for a license for public entertainment on Sunday for the Lab Collaborative Barbecue Festival. Next is a one-day liquor license for Spectacle Management for several events. Colin Mockery, thank you, Mr. Molloy. And Brad Sherwood, another for Andy Summers and Chris Cross and the High Kings. Those are all separate applications for individual one-day liquor licenses. We're also asked to be approve the the Select Board meeting minutes for April 10th and April 10th joint Select Board meeting with the Appropriation Committee and Capital Expenditures Committee. And last is an approval for a request for a deferral of water and sewer payments. Do any members of the board wish to have items removed from consent and individually considered? Okay, seeing none. Ms. McKenna, can I ask why you're standing?
Don McKenna, 9 Hancock Street. I just wanted to make some comments about the application for the first item, the Chinese American entertainment license. So I don't know.
If the board will entertain it, we will, well, you'll have 2 minutes. So, and Mr. Pato has agreed to help with the timing on the 2-minute timer because I don't have the ability to display the timing. So, Ms. McKenna, if you could state your name and address for the record, and you have 2 minutes.
Don McKenna, 9 Hancock Street. Thank you. I have no objection to the event taking place, but I am concerned because last year it was a big issue. They really overwhelmed the property. They had an inordinate number of signs, and it creeped way into behind Buckman Tavern. And I see that there's some intent maybe to do that again. And I thought that we had discussed last year at the time that there was going to be some directions given to them, and I'm just making sure that they have been given the directions to stay to the right of the visitor center as you face it, and not that they don't have the right to just put signs up without permissions ahead of time, because I think we all looked at the number of signs and thought it was overwhelming to the site, and especially with what's going on in front with the Lexi here right now.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank
McKenna,
you.
for your comments. Colleagues, I move that we approve the consent agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded by a roll call. I'm sorry. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, seeing none, it is unanimous 5-0. Okay, now we're going to move on to our items for individual consideration. Our first item on the agenda for that this evening is for the board to discuss the zero waste survey results and recommendations. We're being joined by Maggie Peard, the Sustainability and Resilience Officer for the town. Maggie and the team from Tufts will conducted the survey to explore potential changes in our waste collection system. So if I could ask Maggie and the team to pull up some chairs and have a seat. And Ms. Katzenbach has put the presentation on the screen.
I'll just quickly introduce the project as they get settled, but Maggie Peard, Sustainability and Resilience Officer. We had a team from Tufts Department of Urban Environmental Policy and Planning this past semester working on a project coming out of our zero waste plan. So they were looking at the 5 strategies that were kind of identified as a short-term priority in the zero waste plan, and did some public outreach to understand kind of how the public felt about these actions and made some recommendations based on research in other communities. So they're here today to present their recommendations and results of the survey. And Mr. Pinsino and I hope to come back at a future meeting to kind of discuss the recommendations and hear guidance on where we should direct efforts in the future.
Thank you, Ms. Peard. Welcome. If you all want to introduce yourselves, and feel free to go through the presentation.
Hi, my name is Izzy Stefanos. I'm a Master's of Sustainability student at Tufts. Like Maggie said, we're in the UEP program.
I'm Camille Ross. I'm also a Master's of Sustainability student.
I'm Ryan Cadet, and I'm a Master's of Urban and Environmental Policy and Planning.
Thank you. So just a quick overview of what we'll be talking about today. We're going to give a little bit of background about the presentation, and then talk about the 5 different systems that we researched and analyzed, and then we'll talk mostly about the survey results, and then based on all of that, our recommendations and findings. So this is our team. We had a 4th member who unfortunately could not join us today, but like Maggie said, we worked with her and then Dave from the Department of Public Works. This is us on a site visit to the Hartwell compost facility a couple months ago. This was our overall project goal. We really wanted to focus on the diversion aspect of reducing waste, and so getting as much waste away from landfills as possible and making sure that they are all ending up in their respective waste streams.
So these are the 5 system changes that we evaluated and researched for Lexington's consideration for their waste reduction goals, and as well as our evaluation metrics, criteria that we use to focus our research and evaluation to kind of capture Lexington's goals for what they want to know from their residents and what they wanted to know from us. So the first system change is automated curbside waste collection. Lexington currently uses manual waste collection. Automated requires standardization of waste bins compatible with the mechanized arms on the waste truck you'll see in the bottom picture. But overall, automated collection is a lot more efficient. There's less idling on the curb. It requires less workers, less trucks per town area, which can reduce emissions costs. And then the standard size waste bins can incentivize residents to reduce their overall solid waste to accommodate that standard size bin.
The next system that we looked at is curbside organics collection. Separate from some of the other systems, this is something that Lexington is already doing and doing pretty successfully. They piloted a program last summer with Black Earth composting with 2,000 households, and we're expanding this summer to 4,000. There's overall a lot of enthusiasm from Lexington residents about this program, and you can see the statistic at the bottom showing how much waste, how much organic waste can be diverted from landfills through this process.
The next system change is alternating week trash collection, pivoting from every week solid waste collection to every other week. This usually goes hand in hand with implementing weekly recycling pickup, which Lexington already does, and providing residents with curbside compost collection, which Lexington's already doing. So it could be a really seamless transition. It does incentivize waste reduction to because residents need to make it 2 weeks instead of 1 week before they put their solid waste out on the curb, which also encourages residents to participate in composting programs and recycling more appropriate materials.
Trash metering program is also being considered, and so we researched, how this would look. This also requires a standardization of some units to set rates, and so I've given an example of the town of Natick, which sells bags of trash at a certain price, and all trash collected must be in those bags. Can we go back? Thank you. And so this requires sort of a standardization of either a per bag or per barrel price. A variation of this that's also very popular and well received is a hybrid system. And so this is usually considered first bag free or sometimes first barrel free, which works well with an automated waste collection system. And although this can be controversial because it internalizes the cost of a system usually seen as free onto residents, it does have proven benefits, so it reduces municipal solid waste volume and greenhouse gas emissions.
The last system or systems is expanding reuse collection for bulky waste. So if you look at the chart, you can see that over a third of bulky waste is furniture items, followed second by wood, which can be yard waste and landscaping waste. So all of these items have very similar challenges in that it is very time expensive and monetarily expensive to collect and store these items, in addition to some of the furniture items specifically being comprised of many different types of materials, which can further complicate the disposal process. And so some of the solutions that we looked at for Lexington specifically really focus on community engagement. So a little bit later, we'll talk more about the fix-it clinics, swap days, and zero waste days.
As Izzy mentioned earlier, we did develop and distribute a survey to Lexington residents. They were surveyed mainly on how much they already know about the 5 waste reduction strategies, as well as their willingness to participate and any issues, concerns, thoughts on accessibility and convenience of their ability to participate in those strategies. We were lucky enough to work with a really engaged community, and we received over 1,500 responses in just under a month of it being active. I think there's some brief graphs on the next slide about the demographics of our survey respondents. As you can see, it's mainly 2-person households. The vast majority were homeowners, and those statistics, as well as the annual household income, is consistent with our research into Lexington's most recent census data. We did get mostly older groups of people responding to the survey, but overall, we do feel like our sample size gives us a great sense of how Lexington feels about each of these strategies.
So these graphs show the responses for our willingness to participate questions. I'll note that there are 4 on here. The 5th, which is expanded reuse, recycling, collection, is not on here because that does already exist. And so looking at expanding that, we're more focused on accessibility and convenience concerns. You can see automated and curbside compost collection. Both are very popular, well supported. For curbside compost, many people do or are willing to pay for that service. Whereas for alternating week collection and trash metering, they do have a slight majority, but they are less popular. And so for planning for these, there are going to be more accessibility and convenience concerns to take into account before implementation. So in terms of accessibility and convenience, some of the main concerns that residents had were storing and moving more larger bins. Right now, any bin is allowed on the curbside. And so if bins were standardized, it might be too large for some people to want to be moving around. Also, pests and odors, especially for residents who are not used to holding on to waste for longer periods of time or not used to holding on to organic waste. Accommodations that people are interested in mainly focus on more convenient ways to donate and reuse items. And so the next few slides are some graphs of our survey responses. I don't want to go too deep into these right now, so you can sort of scroll through them, and we added some insights of our own as well. If you could just scroll through some of these graphs. Down to the cost considerations. And we want to sort of provide some of our results, and some of our results also will be in our report that we're finalizing this week. So in addition to the public opinion, there also are some cost considerations. We weren't able to get a lot of exact costs, so these are very preliminary, but we were able to rank them based on sort of a cost or an overall saving for the town. You can see automated waste collection does not have a huge change because a lot of these costs, so the trucks with mechanized arms and the standardized bins can be included in the contract. So that's not a huge change. For curbside compost collection, it does reduce overall waste by around 38%. And so saves around $21 per household on the tipping fee multiplied by the total volume. It is, however, very expensive per household right now. So this $99 per household may go down, but that is still an overall cost. Alternating week collection reduces frequency, so saves a lot on the overall contract. Trash metering as well saves a lot of money, depending on how the rate structure is set up. So the rates can be higher and saves more money, or a lower rate would save less. Understanding this now is a free service, and so an added cost might not be very popular. Expanded reuse collection also is pretty variable because of, I guess, the different waste streams that recycling has to go into. However, there are some grants available for towns and also for businesses who are involved in these processes that can sort of alleviate that cost.
In addition to our recommendations, we wanted to represent our findings graphically in a clear and concise way for maybe it to be distributed to residents as part of implementing any of these system changes will require some education to get people on board and see what it would look like for them. So we created a scorecard framework in which we rated each of the 5 system changes against each of the 5 criteria on 3-tier scales. An important note is that we're not comparing any of the strategies to each other, since our research concluded that a lot of these strategies work well, even best in combination with each other and implemented together. So this is just a guide for how to read the scorecard. And the next slide is our overall scorecard with all 5 system changes against the 5 criteria. We also have individual scorecards going in our report, in which we'll go into some detail about the nuances behind these ratings for each of the 5 strategies in specifically. But we thought this would be a good tool to inform residents in a clear and concise way about how the benefits of these strategies, as well as what it would look like in practice and how it would affect them.
So this is our first suite of recommendations. We want to start by continuing to expand the composting program. Something that was clear in our survey is that a lot of residents are very enthusiastic about composting, and especially because the town program is free, there's a lot of enthusiasm from residents already. And so we don't think that expanding that program should be too difficult. And then once composting has been kind of standardized within the town for a few years or some amount of time, we'd like to see the town move to alternating week waste collection. Although it is a little bit more unpopular than some of the other strategies, it does provide a significant diversion of solid waste. And we think that once residents are more used to composting and storing and disposing of their organic waste properly, that it shouldn't be too much of a switch to do alternating waste collection.
Another set of recommendations for Lexington's consideration is to pursue automated collection. It does overall increase the efficiency of waste collection tremendously, and a lot of municipalities in Massachusetts have been implementing it gradually. That standardization of waste bins is another strategy for Lexington to residents to reduce their overall waste, and it can work really well in combination with alternating collection and even metering programs. Building off of that, in terms of a metering program, the hybrid system is the best received, and it provides a really good combination of residents receiving a service they're satisfied with, and also taking accountability and incentivizing them reducing their overall solid waste. Investing into education will be important for this strategy, since typically there is a little bit of backlash according to our survey, not backlash, but wanting to pay for a system isn't always the most popular option. But a lot of residents won't have to pay, since there is an allowed amount of trash that many residents won't exceed.
Our final set of recommendations is first a general expansion of reuse, recycling, collection, and donation drop-offs. So these significantly reduce trash volume by taking a lot of bulky and often reusable items out of the waste stream, which also then allows for some more rigorous system changes that we're proposing to happen. And in addition to that, a lot of community events will provide opportunities for people to connect with the people who actually provide some of these recycling services that they may not have been aware of before. And so this sort of relates to our last recommendation, which is general community engagement surrounding the trash system. So many residents in our survey were not necessarily familiar with a lot of existing resources, whether that be from the town or non-government organizations. And so sort of making those connections between the people who have things that they want to put into a waste stream and the people who can recycle those properly or can put those in the right places is really important. Additionally, community education is going to be a primary startup cost for really all of these systems that we're recommending. And we've sort of touched on that here and there. And so understanding that, and in the planning phase, there's going to be a need for people to understand, or they won't work on their own. And so some of the methods that we came up with were general town meetings, education campaigns, using town networks, marketing campaigns, and other town-wide events. So it really appears that people do want to be doing the right thing with their waste, and they will when given access to a lot of these systems. So thank you so much for listening to this presentation. We had a great time looking through a lot of this data and researching some of these system changes. And we're really looking forward to finishing this report and seeing how you sort of can implement your zero waste plan in the future. So let us know if you have any questions, and thank you so much.
Thank you all so much for the presentation. This is very informative and very, as Ms. Hay pointed out, very well done, formatted and all that. It looked great.
Thank you.
So I'm going to open it up to my colleagues. We have about 5 minutes for questions or comments. And if there's comments and questions beyond that, this is not our last opportunity to discuss this. We will be discussing this, as Ms. Peard said, with her and Mr. Pinsino at a future meeting. So any comments or questions from the board? Ms. Hay.
So first of all, thank you again. I really do think it's incredibly well done, very digestible and understandable to whether you're already interested in the topic or not. So thank you for that. One of the things that has come up over and over every time that we have talked about automating the trash removal, which has been many years at this point, are the issues around multi-unit dwellings. Where you put the trash if you have a lot of different people using one facility, that it can still be reached by that arm. So I think that would be one thing. I don't know whether in any of the research you did, you looked at places where communities were servicing multi-unit residential developments. And I think especially as we start to look at the fact that we will have more of those, when we already had heard from the existing residents in condominium complexes, et cetera. But I think that's going to be one of the challenges that we have going forward, is figuring out how to access that. So again, if you have anything from your research and want to share that with Ms. Peard, because I think that's going to be question number one when this comes back around. And I know Mr. Pinsino has heard it before as well. Thank you.
I didn't see any of that. I wasn't particularly looking for it, but I know that it is a system that a lot of towns are implementing. So I think there will definitely be some precedent for how other municipalities will overcome that. Unfortunately, I don't have any information off the top of my head, but yeah. So I think there is precedent out there that we could look into further, but at the time, no, unfortunately.
Would make a great appendix.
Mr. Sandine.
So I want to echo the comments of my colleagues. I really appreciate the work you've done and the recommendations you made. Got a little minor question on alternating week waste collection. In the survey, it shows that 58% of the folks that you surveyed approved. The scorecard says against. So I was trying to figure out when, at least in an election, when 58% of people vote, it's usually a sign that people support the result.
Yeah, so a lot of this survey, I'm sure you'd understand, is a lot of sort of open responses. And so although in the question directly asking sort of, do you support this system, a majority did say yes. There was a lot of sort of open response answers that we can't really quantify, but we're very, very much against it. And so we we're able to sort of show this 58% that some people are okay with this, some people can hold their waste for longer, but there is a very vocal crowd that would not want this. And so it will definitely require some extra planning.
Thank you for that clarification and an alert.
Okay, seeing no further comments, questions, I just want to, again, thank you. I think we all appreciate data at this table and being able to analyze the data. Of course, I did have some folks that said, I didn't know about the survey, and why didn't I get asked? Trash is one of those things that's used by, or waste collection is used by everyone, almost everyone, I shouldn't say. And, so for some, seeing 1,500 responses doesn't seem like it's enough, to get a pulse. But I feel that you did a nice job. And I know Ms. Peard and Jonas Miller, our communications director, did a fair amount of outreach. But if people do have comments or questions or want any additional feedback, you're always welcome to email the select board or email our sustainability and resilience officer if you want to give any additional information. We're always listening, and we haven't made any decisions yet. So thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, colleagues, our next item on the agenda is for Leslie Wilcott Henry and Kim O'Brien. I don't know if Kim is here, but from the Lexington Farmers Market to provide a recap of the 2023 Farmers Market season and a preview of the 2024 market plans. So this is a opportunity for them to explain the past challenges and future initiatives.
Hello, everyone.
Oh, I think the microphone's off. There you go.
Hi, everyone. I always joke that I'm the harbinger of spring. I'm like a robin. When I come to the meeting, everybody gets excited because if I'm talking about the farmers market, it means we're moving into summer season. So thank you, as always, for letting the farmers market come and tell you about our great last year and what's coming up. Kim O'Brien was going to be here today. She had to go to a family funeral. So I'll be covering both last year and what we're looking forward to. You have a nice bulky report that we send every year. It works as an archive for us as well as information for you. So I'm not going to be that professor in the front of the class who reads what I already gave you as a handout. I'll just give you some of the highlights in the summary. We had a great season last year. We have had consistent attendance the whole time we've been at the Worthen Road practice field. People like the accessibility. Parking is good. There were some issues with the ability for people who have mobility issues to get onto the site because of the access road and the field conditions. We've been working with the DPW, the Commission on Disability, and the Conservation Commission, and they've been doing some work to get ready for this year. So we feel hopeful that that's been alleviated somewhat. We had our highest seasonal demand ever for SNAP, the Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program at the farmers market. We had over $34,000 spent at the market. We matched, the farmers market matches, as you know, up to $15 per customers using SNAP. We matched up to over $17,400 in funds, which we raised privately. That was an average of 48 households weekly coming to the farmers market. It's a good news, bad news thing. The good news is that we're getting the word out that healthy local food is accessible, that we have programs that support it, that we are a community that is welcoming and inclusive to those who need food assistance. The bad news is that the number of people who need food assistance is rising. So we're always sort of trying to figure out how to raise the funds to meet the need. We are committed to doing that. We really appreciate the 2 grants that the town gave us the past 2 years from ARPA funds to support that program. $10,000 2 years ago and $8,000 last year. Those funds aren't available anymore, so we will be looking as hard as we can for funds to sort of continue to support the program, both from individuals in the community as well as sponsors, grants if we can get them. So anything anybody knows that might help us with that, we appreciate hearing about it. One other exciting thing is that we partnered with FoodLink, which is a food rescue organization in Arlington that does fantastic work. So we were able to partner with them in September and October. I think it was, what's the number I'm looking for? It was, I think, 1,800 pounds of produce were redirected to organizations that need them. We had something like 60 bags of bread and baked goods. That was in only 8 markets. So we're excited to have the program instituted all season and starting at our first market and working with our generous farmers and vendors who are the ones who donate the food to be then given to the food rescue organization. This coming year, we have 33 farmers and vendors overall. There'll be 24 weekly. We're excited to have 9 new vendors coming, particularly some really good local bakers and cafes. So we have Ovenbird Cafe in Belmont, Butternut Bakehouse, which is in Arlington and Belmont. Captain Martin's Seafood started at the winter market and has been a great addition. We're having them come as well. They'll be having a lot of prepared foods. We have a coffee roaster, 2 flower farms, a mushroom vendor, and a new hard cider vendor coming. We're also hoping to introduce, hopefully in June, something called the Pop Club, which is the Power of Produce. It's a program to engage kids age 5 to 11 with eating more fruits and vegetables. We provide $2 in coupons to a child who's enrolled in the program. It incentivizes them to go. They can only spend them at a farmer who sells produce. Kids in other programs in other towns have been learning about saving money, budgeting, all kinds of side impacts from this program, in addition to extra money coming into the farmers and vendors who we always want to support through any program we have. Our challenges really are continued ability to meet the demand for SNAP funds, to ensure that we run a safe and welcoming market, particularly in a political year. It's going to be interesting because we are a public space and people come and share views. We have a great relationship with the town in terms of who's able to come and speak at the market or be outside the market to share ideas or have petitions signed. We're looking forward to working with the town on our anticipated move back to Fletcher Park, when that might be. We're thinking it's going to be in 2025. We are grateful to be included in the discussions that the select board and other town offices are going to be having about that move back. And we're grateful to be a valued community institution and included in the discussion and the use of community space. Finally, I want to say some thank yous to people who've really made a difference for us. The Department of Public Works and Dave Pinsino have done a great job, and really the DPW staff, the Recreation Department, particularly Melissa Petit and Peter Coleman, have been really good in helping us when we've had other events and had to shift. I want to thank Jim Malloy for all his support over the years. I know I'm going to see Jim before he leaves in September, but you've been a great supporter of the market, and we appreciate all you've done, along with Callie Axtell and Kathy Severance in the town manager's office. I realized the one thing I didn't say is that we had over 80% of our markets last year impacted by weather, either heavy rain on Monday or bad rain on Tuesday. So I'm really looking forward to this year being Tuesday clear. That's pretty much the rule. If we have one bad year, the next year is going to be really good for us. So thank you all for your support, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you so much for that update. Colleagues, any questions or comments?
I have a softball question for you. What's the opening day?
Opening day is Tuesday, May 28th. I heard from Kim Katzenbach that you are all going to attend to ring the bells. It's our 20th year this year, so it's a pretty exciting anniversary for us, and it's really a reflection of the support the community has given us over the years.
Well, I will add one comment. You talked about the SNAP benefits and the needs expanding there. They've also seen the same expansion of need at the food pantry in Lexington. Mm-hmm. And this is a reminder for folks here in the room and at home. Everyone will be receiving in their mailbox a bag and a postcard with the needs of the food pantry in Lexington. Please fill your bag, and your postal worker will pick that up on Saturday, May 11th. Mm-hmm. So please fill your bags. This is the largest collection each year for the food pantry, and this food they collect usually brings them through the summer. So it's a critical need for them. But thank you so much for this update.
Thank you.
We're looking forward to all being there soon to ring the bells.
And we do have our bells that now harmonize when you ring them, so it's a really
Do we have to sing too?
No, okay, just ring. That's all.
No
Thank you,
just
everyone.
ring. No.
I think 20-year t-shirts are in order.
We're thinking about that.
Thank you. Best of luck with the weather this year.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
Okay, colleagues, our third item on the agenda this evening is to have Sheila Page, our Assistant Planning Director, update us on the town's townwide bicycle and pedestrian plan. The plan has been updated and influenced by a lot of public feedback, and Sheila will outline all of that tonight. And the board will consider moving to accept this plan this evening. So I'll turn it over to you, Sheila.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. My name is Sheila Page. I'm the Assistant Planning Director. I'm also the coordinator for the Transportation Safety Group. And last year we hired VHB to create Lexington's first townwide bicycle and pedestrian plan. And if you recall, on November 27th, Phil Goff gave a very detailed presentation about the plan. So I'm just going to go give you a quick overview of the plan. We'll talk about challenges and lessons learned, summarize the changes of the plan since that November 27th presentation, and things we need to do to move forward. And then also, as Mr. Lucente said, I'm here to ask you to accept this plan as a guiding document for elected officials and staff to use as we make budget, staffing, work plan decisions. In creating the plan, we did an inventory of existing conditions. We did extensive public outreach, and we held 3 public meetings where we talked about what we want, where do we want it, and how we're going to get there. We identified destinations. We also talked about the importance of safety, but also the importance of perceived safety. Everybody has a different level of comfort on the road. And we want to help people overcome that, and so we can get them out on our sidewalks and bicycles, walking, getting there, but using it for transportation and as well as recreation. At these 3 public meetings, we did some mapping activities. We did some prioritizing activities. We had a lot of conversations. We had an online survey. Our survey got 397 participants, so I was very impressed with the other group getting over 1,500. And from all that, we created 2 plans, a pedestrian and trail network recommendation and a bicycle network recommendation. And this lays out kind of a well-connected network targeting those destinations. But this is a huge body of work, and we can't do it all at once. So VHB also, using input from the public, created a scoring methodology and created criteria. And from that criteria, they put together a prioritized list sorted into 5 categories. Can you move? Yeah, and move another one, please. Thank you. And in the plan, not only does it focus on sort of infrastructure, but also our programs and policies and what we can do to encourage more bicycling and walking and making people feel safer. And then finally, we want this to be a living document. We don't want it to sit on the shelf. So we need to constantly measure how we're doing. So we put together some metrics so that we could kind of gauge our performance and make adjustments where we need to. And along the way, we learned a few things. We had a ton of very enthusiastic bicycle and pedestrian advocates participate in all of our outreach. They had incredible knowledge and a lot of thoughtful feedback, and it really helped put together a great plan. But what we didn't reach very well were the folks that don't walk and bike, and those are the people we want to help walk and bike. And so it was hard to gauge what their level of comfort is, what we need to do to get them out. The plan also, after we had already selected our criteria and did the scoring, the MBTA communities zoning passed. And so there was an interest in adding density into the criteria. We also received a ton of comments about the safety of the bikeway and the overcrowding and a lot of interesting ideas of solutions. But this plan that was kind of out of scope of this plan. So that's maybe something we need to focus on later on. And then this plan kind of created a network. And it's a network that are lines on a map, and it's not built yet. And we still have a lot of work to do and a lot of decisions to make. But we're going to get there. And I also want to point out that we're doing a great job. We do consider bicycle and pedestrian safety as we make all of our decisions now. We have a lot of programs that encourage bicycling, walking, and bus riding. So I think we should give ourselves some credit for that. And I want to talk about the summary of changes since our November 27th meeting. We received feedback from you all as well as from the community. The changes are detailed in a memo. But to summarize, we edited the connectivity goal to not only focus on connecting neighborhoods with key destinations, but to connect neighborhoods between neighborhoods, and then also make connections within the neighborhood so that people can enjoy their section of town. We also added a vision statement that kind of outlines how we want the final product to be received, and also points out that this plan is born out of other existing plans, the Climate Action Plan, the Age-Friendly Plan, the Lexington Comprehensive Plan. They all talk about the need for a bicycle pedestrian plan. And then staff reviewed a lot of the program and policy recommendations carefully, and we revised it a little to make it a little more clear and also to fit it into a Lexington context. And then finally, because we're trying to make our roads and make our whole pedestrian network, bicycle and pedestrian network, safer and feel more comfortable for people. We're trying to figure out a better way to measure how people feel. So we added a metric where we're going to track near misses. And so we're going to provide an opportunity where people can report those, and hopefully we'll see those near misses go down. But that'll be quite subjective, but I think it'll kind of get at a little bit more of what we're doing. So our next steps are, again, asking the select board to accept this plan. Staff has a meeting scheduled, I don't know, end of May or so, to kind of review, match this plan with our existing capital plan and existing maintenance plan, and kind of see what we can do through those existing projects to get some of this plan implemented. We're already working with MassDOT. I was at a conference last week and I connected with a few MassDOT folks, and they have a program, a quick build program. So I'm hoping we got a few of our projects in that, because some of the projects in our plan are MassDOT assets. And then I'm hoping staff will use this plan as they develop their budgets and work plans. And then we're always exploring grant opportunities, but having the plan written down makes us a better candidate for these grant opportunities. So moving forward, the plan suggests that we do annual progress reports to the select board, and then also do a little more of a holistic reevaluation every 3 years. And then the plan should probably be updated every 6 to 9 years, where we may want to consider new criteria after our experience of seeing how we're doing. But there are questions that remain. We got to figure out how we're going to fund this. Do we want to fund it status quo, but maybe target our projects a little better, or are we going to increase our budgets? And if so, are we going to focus on all the categories or just certain categories? The plan also suggests dedicating a staff person that has the authority, that will oversee the implementation, but then has the authority to move between departments. And then the ever highly interested, ever pressing idea of which projects are we going to do. High impact and big ticket item projects need a deeper conversation than this plan. And I think that conversation can happen as we develop our budgets. And I'm happy to come back in early June or mid-June and talk about kind of how we're doing on that. I also want to thank folks, but I'm not going to name folks really individually. We had a ton, this really truly was a group effort. We had a lot of input from a lot of committees, staff, from various departments. But I do want to give a special thanks to the Transportation Safety Group, the Transportation Safety Group Plus, which was our advisory group. as well as Betty Gow and the Lexington Bicycle Advisory Committee. They were really good at soliciting input and keeping the project on track. So with that, I'm happy for questions.
Colleagues, I'll turn it over to anyone who has questions, Mr. Pato, and then Ms. Barry. And Ms. Sadie.
So I want to thank you and all involved. This was an extraordinary amount of work, and I think leads us to a very positive direction. I have a few small, short comments. The first is on prioritization of projects. I think that the process you have is excellent in doing that. However, and there is always a however.
Oh, of course, yeah.
There are projects that have been underway, though relatively early in planning phases, and the rubrics used here would lead someone to think that the priority is changed. And I think that as a board, I would prefer that we take the existing project, and Burlington Street is a clear example, and keep carrying that forward as we're adopting this plan for future projects. The second part really was the word adopting. In your memo, you refer to having staff work on what has been adopted, but the motion calls for us to accept it. And there is a narrow difference between what that means. And I think the board probably does want to adopt this plan rather than simply accepting the report. And I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Ms. Barry.
Thank you, Mr. Vicente. So as I was reading through this document, and it's great, it's very thorough, but there was this one little phrase that I wasn't really sure what it meant. So I'm hoping you can help me because it showed up on a bunch of the spreadsheets. What exactly is a side path when you compare it to a path or a sidewalk? What does that mean?
So a side path is a path that goes alongside a road, but is separate from the road. Usually there's a little grass strip between, but it's wide enough. So it's a multi-use path that parallels a road is really what it is. So it's wide to accommodate both pedestrians and
wider than
bicyclists.
the typical sidewalk?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Ideally 8 feet wide.
Okay.
At the minimum.
Okay. And Mr. Pato, to Mr. Pato's point, I'll just say, I believe historically, the board has accepted reports and not adopted reports. That's my recollection.
Ms. Hay.
Thank you. So thank you very much. I actually think there's a lot of great stuff in here. I particularly loved the suggestion of the reporting app for, issues as a rider or a walker. As someone who trips regularly on tree roots in sidewalks, I think that's great. Maybe it's something that we can incorporate into the new C-Click fix that we're going to be adopting. That would be great. And then I think, well, a couple of things. One is that, and I know I've said this a lot over the course of the winter, but we never hesitate as a community to put money into improving our roads and our parking lots and all of the rest of our infrastructure for single occupancy vehicles. And I would love to see us actually start treating the infrastructure for walking and biking in a similar way, that it is an integral part of what we are as a community and how we provide access. We talk about wanting to drive down car trips, and I think this is a great way to do it. So I would love to see us really move this forward. And I guess I need to follow up. I know I had, through Stacy, sent a question about the prioritization of the prior existing projects like Burlington and North. And I think the response was that it was a CIP for 26 with the expectation of construction in 28. And I just wanted you to help me understand, generally speaking, we have done sidewalks, even some of the very expensive, complicated ones like Concord Ave, through a capital plan. So when you say a CIP, I think CIP is something that is subject to, maybe it'll make it if we have the funds for it, maybe it won't, but we're not actually budgeting for it out of immediate funds. Is that what you intended, or were you meaning something different?
I don't think I focused on the funding source, but right now in engineering's, maybe I'm using the wrong term, but the capital plan they have sort of earmarked a chunk of money in FY26 for design and then in FY28 for construction.
So it is in the capital plan as a project at this point.
Yes, the money's in there. I don't think it's been actually assigned to.
Correct. No, I understand that part.
project yet.
We haven't had that conversation. I know,
Right.
the
Yeah.
budget isn't certainly set. I just wanted to make sure I was understanding that the at least possibility of planning for it was not entirely ethereally tangential.
No, because it's a big chunk of money. So the capital expenditures committee needs to know it's coming. So
Mr. Malloy had wanted to speak to that.
Just very briefly, a CIP and the capital plan is the same exact thing.
Okay.
The capital improvement plan is all CIP is.
Okay.
They've been thinking of PIRs or something like that.
I may have crossed that wire. That's entirely possible given the day I'm having today.
Thank you, Steve. Sorry.
Oh, I just have one other thing. I noticed that one of the appendices had to do with recommendations on motorized vehicles on bike paths and stuff. Is that something that is also moving forward? And then I did not have a chance to read it. I saw that it existed. But is that also going to come back to us with a recommendation?
Not really. I think the conclusion was that as of now, under current state laws, the expectation is that these electric vehicles of sorts, scooters and that sort of thing, should adhere to the rules of bicycles. And that'll be our expectation. And we might do further signage on that, but there's not really a further policy and recommendation at this point.
Thank you.
I did see Mr. Pinsino with his hand up, but now it's gone. So Mr. Pinsino, raise your hand if you did want to speak on this or answer any questions. Mr. Sandine.
So I wanted to thank you. Before I get into the thanks, I just want to say, along with some of my other colleagues, that I really do believe that projects that were already in queue, like Burlington and North Street, should maintain their status in the queue, and we should be considering that going forward. So with that said, I just want to say that I'm incredibly thankful that the town is moving forward with a comprehensive bike and pedestrian plan, and that has been developed with such a successful outreach program. And I think, I'm not sure that there is a committee meeting that Sheila hasn't been at in the past year. And so we've had a lot of input, not just from committee members, but from many town departments. And I thank all the engagement from the town staff that have participated in this. There's many different departments that have weighed in on this. And so the other thing that I want to thank you for, and it's very nice to see, is that from November to now, a lot of the comments that people made back in November have been incorporated into this in a very thoughtful way. So I really appreciate that. And the top focus on safety and connectivity. We can have the safest route ever and be perceived as the safest route ever, but if it only goes 100 yards, nobody's going to go anywhere. So we need both the safety and the connectivity, and I really appreciate both of those being at the top of the list there. And to Ms. Hayes' comment, I really appreciate Ms. Hayes' comment about we need to be thinking about bike and pedestrian-centric as opposed to car-centric culture. And one of the comments in the plan, and it says that we're going to be moving to create an integrated bike and pedestrian policy. And so that's a really interesting way of accomplishing the things Ms. Hay is talking about, so that we can have the town staff come back in a year or so with some very thoughtful prospects of what a policy might look like, so that when we are doing capital planning, we're saying, okay, this is what our policy is for what a street should look like. I love it. This is a tremendous plan. It's going in the right direction. I want to thank Sheila. I want to thank the Bicycle Advisory Committee. I want to thank the Greenways Corridor Committee and everybody else who worked on it. Thank you. It's wonderful.
Thank you, Mr. Sandine. I'll echo the comments on Burlington Street. I don't want to repeat them, and thanks for the report. I do want to just echo one thing that you had mentioned about the near misses. I thought that was an interesting thing. I do think the C-click fix could do that. I had recently experienced going to the Netherlands, and Amsterdam, I was told before I got there that there's more bikes than people, and it is actually true. And there was probably 6 near misses with our little group that we were with. So I think that's important for pedestrians and for bicyclists and automobiles to have some methodology to say, hey, this feels dangerous to me. Not just accidents, right? It's too late at that point. So I'm going to open this up for very brief comments. We have a couple hands up online. If there's anyone in the room that wants to make a comment, please stand at the microphone. So I'm going to first recognize online someone with the name Jay. If Ms. Katzenbach could unmute that person, if you could state
hi. This is Jay Luker, 26 Range Avenue. I had a couple of comments and maybe a question if I have time. First, I want to echo everyone's what people are saying about how great this plan is. I think it shows a level of commitment and seriousness that is deserved, and I really appreciate all the effort and time that's gone into it. And also, I appreciated the history that it went into about funding of sidewalks. And I have a question about that I'll get back to. And I think I was one of the people who recommended or suggested that density be one of the criteria that sidewalk projects get ranked by. And I begrudgingly agree that Burlington Street and North Street projects should remain at the top. But when I look at that street, I think it's a poster case for why density is something we ought to be looking at when we rank these projects. Because I don't know if we have a street in the town that's less dense than Burlington, and where we're going to be able to impact fewer people per mile of sidewalk. Everyone deserves to have a sidewalk, of course, but we have limited budget and time, and places that are going to impact and benefit more people should maybe come first. The other thing, this is a specific thing that I read in the plan. I just want to make one comment quickly about it. And I don't remember which page it was on, but it was listing some approaches to improving street safety. And one of them, or a couple of them, mentioned in an enforcement section, like decoy operations. And I can kind of intuit what that means. And I really cannot stress enough how much I don't like that idea.
Mr. Luker, your time is up. If you could finish your
sorry. I think it would be giving money to the police department, which is already sufficiently funded. Money that is, precious money for sidewalk or, for other more effective mitigation efforts. And also it shows a lack of empathy for drivers who are kind of trapped in this the situation that we built for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, if I could now recognize in the room the president at the microphone, you state your name and address for the record.
Thanks. Sarah Bothwell Allen. I live on Burlington Street. So first, I want to thank all of you on the select board for continuing to understand why our street and North Street and the whole neighborhood, it's really not just those two streets, but the entire neighborhood, why it's important to continue prioritizing that one. Partly is that it's been in the queue a long time, and partly I think the adding of connectivity and equity to the revised plan is a big part of what we've been trying to advocate for. To just respond to some of what Mr. Luker said, I just want to remind folks who may be listening that this isn't just about people who live on North Street and Burlington Street, but our neighborhood really also, the whole part that's cut off there from the rest of town is Angier, Graham, Hawthorne, Longfellow, and Whittier. This includes 95 current Lexington public school children who cannot walk to school, who cannot bike to school. There are a lot of blind curves. So I just wanted to let people understand that it really is about more than just what some may perceive as less dense area. And I do appreciate the work that's gone into this. And I would encourage whatever priority ranking of additional projects to really think about other neighborhoods that may be entirely cut off with that connectivity. So thank you for adding that to the plan.
Thank you, Ms. Bothwell-Allen. And then online, our last comment will be from Vanita Burma, if she could be unmuted.
Thank you, Mr. Lisanti.
Ms.
Vinita
Burma, if you
Verma.
could state your name and address for the record, you have 2 minutes. Thank you.
So thank you, Mr. Lisanti. Vinita Verma, 3 Graham Road. I would like to thank Sheila Page and the team for all the hard work that went on for the bike and ped plan. So in response to the sidewalk that's already in queue, so during the annual town meeting on Wednesday, April 1st, 2024, while discussing the sidewalk article, Mr. Penseno kindly addressed my inquiries regarding the bandwidth for the new sidewalks and the progress of the Burlington Street, North Street sidewalk. He mentioned that the town is currently in the design phase and slated for construction in FY 2028. I wish to express my gratitude to the town staff for the dedication thus far. Furthermore, I am keen to offer assistance along with my neighbors in any capacity required for the design or preparatory work for the sidewalk layout. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Verma. Ms. Barry.
Mr. Lisanti, I just want to clarify for the record, I do live on Burlington Street. I did have a conversation with town council about this item. So I have not been commenting on Burlington Street, but I can vote on this, whatever vote we take on the entire plan.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, colleagues, and Ms. Page, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate having you here. And we're going to move on to our 4th item on the agenda. I know you're on.
Are you going to vote to?
Oh my gosh, I am sorry. I see when you don't follow your script, this is what happens. I got too excited because we're a few minutes behind. Okay, so colleagues, I'm going to move that we accept the townwide bicycle and pedestrian plan to serve as a decision-making guide for work plans, capital requests, road maintenance, and infrastructure planning. I know Mr. Pato had asked it to be adopted versus accepted. I think where the motion was published as an accepted, I'm more comfortable with that. So I'm going to put that out there. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded by a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, seeing none, the motion passes by a vote of 5-0. Thank you, Ms. Page, and sorry.
Thank you very much.
And I think you're coming up in a few minutes again. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Pato?
Ms. Lisanti, just briefly, given that we were going to come back and talk about adopting a policy related to this, accepting the report is fine.
Thank you, Mr. Pato. Okay, colleagues, our 4th item on the agenda this evening is for the board to discuss the or have an update and discuss the potential 250th anniversary of the Battle of Lexington Monument at Belfry Hill Park. I'm going to start this off with having Mr. Malloy give us an update, and then we'll have a board discussion so we can come up with some consensus on how the board may proceed on this topic. So I'll start with Mr. Malloy.
Thank you.
Actually, Mr. Malloy, I apologize. Colleagues, I do have this on the agenda for 10 minutes. After the agenda was posted, there was some additional consideration given for there may be some additional feedback. This is the first time we're talking about this at this table. So I would like to ask everyone's indulgence to extend this to a 20-minute discussion rather than a 10-minute discussion so that we have an opportunity to hear from the public who has not had an opportunity to speak to us about this. Mr. Malloy.
Okay, thank you. So this agenda item is to have a public discussion on the proposed monument to commemorate the 250th anniversary. There was a selection committee that was set up to review proposals from the 4 finalists as far as the artists were concerned, and review their proposals. The design from Marian Gusevich was the one that was selected by that selection committee. Some concerns were raised by the select board members as well as town staff related to that proposal at Belfry Park due to the size, maintenance concerns, and some other concerns. So the town considered moving forward with the second place selection from the selection committee, which was from Zach Landsberg, but that also did not seem to have overwhelming support. And so last week, Doug Lucente, as chair, and I met with the donor, Howard Walk, to discuss those concerns and determine, we basically had a discussion that we really needed to do at this point in time is have the select board have a discussion and make a determination on how to move forward, whether we move forward with one of the proposals or withdraw the plan for having a monument for the 250th. And so that's basically where we're at right now. I want to say that it's probably been 6 or 7 weeks since the selection was made, and we've been trying to work through some of these issues. And in order to even move forward and have it done by April 19th of 2025, we really need to make a decision whether we're going to move forward with one of the proposals or not moving forward and not having a monument.
Ms. Berry.
So as chair of the 250 Commission, I will say that the entire 250 Commission is not aware of what's going on with the monument because these conversations were happening kind of not in public purview. So the 250th Commission has not discussed the monument as a full commission. And I think some of them might be watching tonight.
Mr. Pato.
So I have been watching this relatively closely, and my biggest concern is this isn't just about putting up bunting for the 250th celebration. This is a monument that the community is going to live with for hopefully a very long time. And while art, it can challenge the public, and it often is quite good when it challenges the public, in the locations we're talking about, this is something that I would feel really needs significant unified public support. And one of the things that came to me as I was watching the discussions was there isn't an overwhelming support for any one of the proposals. And when looking at a lot of the public postings on the social media around these, there's quite a bit of negative reaction to any of the proposals, which makes me very concerned about us moving forward with a proposal. Because again, I think that while artistically all of these had value and had adherence within the community, they don't strike me in that location as supporting the community's interest. So I think, given where we are at this stage, we would be better off backing away from proceeding with a monument.
Okay, Ms. Berry.
So this is a difficult conversation for me as chair of the 250th, and it's a difficult conversation for me based on the walk that we have walked for, I think, 2 years now, Howard. Has it been 2 years? The walk that we've walked for a while with Howard, the walk that we've walked with MAPC, the significance of this event, not only in our town's history, but in our country's history, and frankly, in world history. And I agree, art is in the eye of the beholder. My only issue with the first place one was I thought that it took up too much of the space. I spend a lot of time in that park, so I'm going to reveal this when I need to do a private phone call. That's where I walk through the work. So, and I've sat in that space a lot in all kinds of seasons, on wet benches, dry benches, snow, sun, the whole thing. It just looked like it was a little bit overwhelming for that park. If we had a nice open field or some other place, I think it'd be a great place to put it. It saddens me that in 20 minutes, we have the potential to make a decision that we are not going to move forward with a monument to mark this historic occasion. It saddens me, and I don't think I was aware that that was the decision that this board was going to make tonight, because I think there are enough people in the community that are not here to weigh in on that.
So I'll just add up, we don't have to make that decision tonight. What we're trying to do is give some public guidance to Mr. Malloy on which direction our board is headed.
So for me, I would love to have a monument somewhere, and whether we're unveiling the final monument next year on April 19th or unveiling something, whether it's we're digging in the ground at that point, I really think this event needs to be, commemorated, and it needs to have something significant, permanent in the ground somewhere. And so maybe when we first thought Belfry Park was the perfect place for this, Belfry Park isn't. Maybe there's a better place in town to put something. But the process that we followed here, the community engagement that we had, the cross-section of people that came forward to be a part of this, I will forever be grateful to. They did a huge amount of work. You have to remember, we had submissions from 33 or 35 people from around the world. That is amazing. And so to our friends at MAPC, Abby and Ananth and their team, I can't say enough good things. I really can't, but I will stop now. I'm getting emotional.
No, I appreciate that. I think we all, I don't want to speak for everyone, but I think we all agreed this is why we went down this path to begin, that this would be a wonderful idea. I think what we were faced with was a number one selection that gave us all some pause because of different reasons. But for me, it was the using up both sides of the park and the scale. That area is not a big area. So the scale of the project that was proposed, I thought, was overwhelming for that area. With that said, I was also of the mindset that maybe we could tweak the design or tweak the layout with the artist to see if we could come up with something that maybe fits in the park better. But this is why we're having a board discussion, so that we can publicly, because we can't, because of open meeting law, we can't all talk. But this is our opportunity to talk and hear everybody's comments and feedback on what direction. So the direction I'm hearing is not complete, because I don't hear from Mr. Sandine and Ms. Hay, and I'd like to hear their comments, but we can either stop everything now, we can revisit with one of the artists, we can start a brand new process at a different location. I mean, I think all those things are acceptable. It's how willing is this board to go in which direction? So I'll ask Ms. Hay and Mr. Sandine if they have any comments they'd like to make.
So I agree that I think it would be a shame for us to pull the plug at this point. I don't think that that's where any of us, at least from what I've been able to gather, that's not the first choice move of any of us. I think we all were very excited about this opportunity, and I think it's an interesting point Ms. Berry raises, that perhaps it's the location that is the problem with which we're grappling. And I would certainly be interested in thinking about what other options we had, although I have to say, I think that a lot of thought did go into identifying that space as both proximate and prominent, as well as appropriate. So I like the idea. I'm just not sure it's a practical one. But I agree that certainly the first choice selection was just too big and overwhelming for the space, both the amount of space in the actual park and the abutting contingent elements surrounding. That said, I do wonder if a way forward is more to be able to have a full open conversation with the 250th Commission and let all of them weigh in as well. There's nothing else here I would take off the table. I don't know that I don't think I'm narrowing anything down, but I'm giving you where I stand.
Thank you, Ms. Hay. Mr. Sandine.
So I too, like my other colleagues, was concerned that what I had thought had happened in a select board meeting was that we had voted to agree to be in one location or the other location at this, and not both sides. And so for me, it was a hard thing to be thinking about, that we would be putting something that size. I also resonated with comments we had from staff that said that this particular design could be a maintenance nightmare and may not be something that is, I don't know, we may not want to have something that is a maintenance nightmare because it may not look as good as it does the day it opens, a week or two or a month or a year later. So I am open. One of the things we haven't talked about, which is mentioned in our packet, is moving to a second selection. I would be open to that discussion. And so that would be fine from my perspective.
Colleague, Mr. Padham.
And to be clear, I also was okay with moving to the second selection, but my understanding was that was no longer viable. So in the absence of that, I didn't feel we had a path forward in the current location.
I'll just say that this would be helpful feedback for the whole board to hear each other's comments on that option. Again, I saw that as a potential option as well. If we all saw that, then maybe
I saw it as a potential option.
okay.
That sounds great.
Then I guess that's a potential option. At this point, I'm going to pause and take some feedback from the public because we have not heard. I know we have some folks from the selection committee here. I know we have one resident online with the hand up. So if anyone's interested in the room, if anyone here wants to make a comment or speak on this, please get stand in line at the microphone in the room. Anyone online, if you could push the raise hand button. So we'll start online with Mr. Parker, who has his hand up. Mr. Parker, if you could state your name and address, and you have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Glenn Parker, 186 Spring Street. I was a participant on one of the committees that was involved in the sculpture exploration that we're going through right now. And I've also been a trustee at the Cordova Sculpture Park for over 2 decades, almost 2 decades now. So I have a fair amount of experience with outdoor sculpture. And so I wanted to raise a few points. I wanted to emphasize that maintenance issues on the Gusevich sculpture are not trivial. And I think that's a serious thing for the town to consider. I think that siting for outdoor sculpture is half the battle. So if the spot that you've got is not the right spot, you should definitely be thinking about another alternative spot or several alternative spots that might work better. And I think you'll have a much better result if you're happy with the siting. You don't think you should try and cram something too big into a space that's too small or that's too crowded with other sculptures, which is another issue with that particular location. One thing I heard was that we're worried about making something that's permanent and long-lasting and significant. And I just want to stress that permanence isn't necessarily the measure of significance. There are temporary sculptures. There are rotating sculptures. There are different kinds of sculptural installations that are not permanent, that are very significant still. So that's another thing to consider. And lastly, I just want to emphasize that public sculpture, especially something that's really permanent, takes time. And we're trying to squeeze a lot of effort and thought into a very short time. And, it's easy to make a really serious error if you don't just let the time, take the time that you need to actually make a good decision. And you're not going to get 100% unanimity on any public sculpture. I can tell you that from experience. But you should not be afraid to take more time. And, and if all it means is that you get to the, the celebration and all you can do is say, sorry, we've almost got it, then that's what we'll do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Parker. Okay. In the room, the first resident at the microphone.
Don McKenna, 9 Hancock Street. And I'm speaking with both the perspective of having served on the committee, having done Anthony Park, which was not an easy thing to accomplish, and also the Battle Green Master Plan. And I think the Battle Green Master Plan gave some good guidance that the whole idea with the area at Belfry Hill was to open it up and make it more usable. And I think some of your comments about it being the wrong location for that reason, I think matters. But I also just wanted to add that I had a concern as far as the representation of those who had fought on the battle, because that's what the All Soldiers Memorial is. And we just did a lot of work using town funds to open up that All Soldiers Memorial, which is to the left of Buckman Tavern, that has everybody's name on the back. And to me, this felt duplicative. But I do hope that we can have an opportunity to do a monument, because with at least what I know in my participation in this, I think that there is another opportunity to take a look at. And I do agree, maybe we have it presented as the end of our celebration in 2026. So I wanted to say all that and hope that we get that opportunity, and thank the board for being deliberative about this.
Thank you, Ms. McKenna. The next individual at the microphone.
Hi, Howard Walk. I'm from 22 Pelham Road, but in Weston, so that may not be of relevance. I just want to thank the board for the process. I know this has been a long process. You hired a good firm to work us through that. I think there's a few directions to go, but nothing's really very clear. I would just say whatever you decide, we shouldn't be ashamed to not go forward, because I think going forward with something that we think is mediocre or not first rate is not going to be doing service to the opportunity. So I just would ask that whatever we do, and I wouldn't be afraid to not go forward if we don't find a ready path. On a personal level, I thought bringing Ms. Gusevich in to have another round to hear feedback would be the best path to the best outcome, because I thought, personally speaking, she was the highest caliber artist, and I think the objections that were raised were real, and I would give her a chance to respond to them, and if we could get to some satisfaction, I think that might be the best path forward. If we wanted to go with the second choice, that's viable as well, and there was mixed feelings about the second choice as well, and some significant concerns. So I'm not sure if there is a clear path forward. I'm supportive of whatever the town wants to do, but I just would encourage you to aim high, because it would be a missed opportunity to come out with something that everybody feels was just a compromise for the sake of a compromise. So anyway, thank you.
And thank you again, Mr. Walk, for all you've done so far to help with this process. And so, colleagues, the big question. Oh, we have one more resident at the microphone. If you want to state your name and address for the record, you have 2 minutes.
Matthew Siegel, 24 Lane Ave in Bedford, but I'm the executive director of the Lexington Arts and Crafts Society. And I think I've been part of every group, every committee that's been part of the process for the last 2 years. One thing I'd like to point out is that the Captain Parker statue doesn't look anything like what it looked like when it was made. And we've decided to let the verdigris, which over time has changed the appearance of the monument, we've accepted that as what's the appropriate look of the monument. Just to say, talking about maintenance of a new piece of work, that sculpture doesn't look anything like what it did when it was made. I don't see any drawback to invited Ms. Gusevich to hear the feedback and see if she can address what the issues are with the scale of the project. Either it can be scaled down or it can't, or she's willing to do that or she's not. Maybe it can be changed in another way. I do think it's I didn't believe that any of the other submissions were worthy, were worthwhile to do. I don't believe that going to an alternative choice is worth doing. I don't believe that they're adequate monuments or works of art. I think that the Gusevich piece is incredibly eloquent, simple and eloquent. Just to point out the few who stood up against the many on that day. I think that that's a timeless statement and a universal statement that anyone from anywhere can understand. I think the piece is quite beautiful. I would love to have her back and see if she can address the concerns and the issues that people have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Siegel. Appreciate your comments. Colleagues, 5 questions: who, what, where, when, why, and how. Maybe that's 6. That's what we have to answer and give some direction. I'm getting some sense that this isn't everyone wants to close the door completely on it. But I'm also not getting a good sense from the board of which direction we want to head in, because each of them has obstacles and hurdles to actually get a monument in the ground. So we could certainly do some things in parallel. But I think it's important that we try to push in a direction with some cohesive thoughts. So, Mr. Sandine.
So we heard from Ms. Berry at the beginning that the 250th hasn't had an opportunity to weigh in. So what I've heard tonight is that there's a couple of concerns. One is the size, potential location, and maybe a willingness to look at a second opportunity. So for me, I'd be interested in hearing what the 250th has to say about those issues.
Mr. Pettit?
So I agree with Ms. Chandine. I would like to hear, but it's also I started with, and I heard a final comment on the importance of not making a choice based on the clock having run out and deciding to choose something that we don't have community support for, right? So if we keep going down this path, which I think is a fine thing for us to do, we should be doing so with the goal to acquire a monument that we are proud of and that it is in a suitable location for what that monument is saying and for how it interacts with our community. So in my concerns that I've expressed somewhat more absolutely at the beginning were the information that I had received on what our options were. I think if we're willing to say this will take as long as it takes, let's keep going.
Ms. Hay, did you want to add anything? You don't have to. Okay. So what I'm hearing some of our colleagues say is let's see what the commission, the 250th commission thinks. Ms. Berry, what are your thoughts on that, scheduling wise? And
so we do have a topic on our agenda for this Wednesday's meeting for an update on the monument, which you will be giving. If you've read the agenda, but you're not going to be there.
Yeah, not an airplane.
Right, so I will be giving that. So yeah, I think we could have the 250th commission weigh in and then get something back to the board.
Okay, so we'll put this on a future agenda just to get the feedback sooner than later. And I know from Mr. Malloy's seat, there was some concerns about timeliness of getting back to the artists. I'm not even sure where we are with that process because MAPC has said that they've completed their work.
They've completed their work as far as their contract goes. I've provided notification to the number 3 and 4 artists that we were not moving forward with either of theirs, that we were looking at other ones. I've spoken with Zach Landsberg, told him we were still thinking about it. And I have not communicated with Miriam Gusevich at all, but
so we'll thank you for that update. I appreciate it. But we'll hear from the 250th commission and bring it back to another agenda. I appreciate everyone's thoughts and feedback for everyone who commented on this tonight.
Let me just ask a question. Do
Yes.
you want to put it, if they're meeting this Wednesday on it, we would have time to add it to next week's agenda. I think the following meeting agenda is pretty full, and so that would put it off to June 3rd.
Yeah, I think let's try to shoot for the 13th. I think there's a little wiggle room in that. We'll make some wiggle room. Okay, because I would like to keep this moving and come up with some path forward. Ms. Hay?
Can I just say, in order to give some structure for Ms. Berry when she meets with the 250th and puts it up, I will say that I had not been in favor of bringing the artist up and giving a second chance because I felt like we were unleveling what had been a level playing field. I may have changed my mind on that at this point, and I'm thinking that I could be open to that because I think if there is that strong a sentiment that is a preferred path, maybe we see what scaling. I don't know. I'm not convinced that it can be adapted in a way that fits, but I guess all I'm saying is I'm going to retract my I'm totally opposed, and I don't know if there's anybody else who wants just so you have some guidance to give the committee where the board is. So I guess I am open to that. and seeing whether or not there is a path forward with Miriam Gusevich. I also similarly have wiggle room with Zach Landsberg. I think there are a lot of elements to that I like, a couple that I was hesitant. So that's sort of where I am on the two.
Any other colleagues want to weigh in on that, Mr. Petto?
So correct me if I'm wrong. I understood that the selection committee essentially came down evenly split, and then they made a selection by one vote. Am I correct?
Yeah.
So if we're going to bring artists back, I think we should bring both of them back and say, how do you address this, and what are you proposing forward? My goal is for the monument to be fitting and for us to have developed broad support for it. I don't care about who the artist is, as long as it is a monument that the community believes is appropriate.
Thank you, Mr. Petto. Mr. Sandino, did you want to add?
I'm fine.
Okay. Ms. Barry?
Ask a clarifying question. Mr. Malloy, from all your conversations with the board members, do you have, or did you write down, or maybe you have in your memory, what individual members' concerns were with Ms. Gusevich and Mr. Landsberg's? Or should they circle back and send that to you?
Well, the board members could circle back and send it to me. I think that I have a pretty good recollection, but doesn't hurt if people want to send their concerns to me, just make sure that it's clear.
I'm just jumping ahead a meeting or two and thinking, this is what I'm presenting to the 250th committee, that the board's open to bringing these two artists back to talk to them about their concerns, that we need to know what those concerns are. So we should start to gather those.
I'm probably both then.
Yes.
Yes.
Is there an appetite for both?
Well, to Ms. Hayes' point, I think it makes it more level.
I agree with that. I just want to make sure we're not, two of us think it's a good idea.
Because they were close.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or tied.
I'm fine with it. My only concern is I don't want to be an artist judging select board.
And I agree with you, Mr. Sandy. It's dangerous.
As am I.
Okay, well, appreciate the conversation. I think we got a little bit of a direction, at least for Wednesday night, and then hopefully for next Monday, we'll get some feedback. All right. With that said, again, thank you everyone for participating in that discussion. We are now going to move on to our next item on the agenda, and I am going to be recused on this item as my mother was involved in some of the planning for this item. Yes, so I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Hay, and I'll be leaving the room. Thank you, Ms. Hay.
You are welcome. So thank you. Our fifth item, welcome back to the desk. Do you want me to move? Our fifth item for individual consideration this evening is to review a proposal for a street art project at the intersection of Kendall Road and Farmcrest Avenue, which is designed as a traffic calming measure. We have with us Ms. Page again. Thank you very much. And Kristen Stellas, a resident of the area, who will be presenting the project for us. So thank you both very much.
Sure, I can start. Almost 2 years ago, Kristen and the neighborhood approached the transportation safety group to find out how they could do some street art in their neighborhood. Transportation safety group worked pretty hard on coming up with some guidelines because we had some varying opinions of how it should go. We came up with those guidelines, and to Ms. Stellich's credit, they have worked hard in meeting all those guidelines that we provided. And so she is here to present the final design, and that was sort of the last step, was getting approval from the select board for the final design. Thank you.
Thank you. And so I have some slides just to reorient. Some of them you may remember from when we came before you to get approval to go ahead. So what is the best way to advance this? Okay, awesome. So in case you are not sure where Farmcrest and Kendall is, we're at that star, that's intersection we're referring to. So next. So as you may remember that Kendall is used as a cut through. Since coming to you, there's a no turn on in 7 to 9 a.m. in the morning, which is amazing and has made a big difference during bus stop and school walking and biking hours. We still have concerns outside of 7 to 9 a.m. And concerns for the safety of our children and other people who are walking in this intersection. So the proposed solution is to paint kind of these tactical curb extensions. The fog lines have been painted by the town, which are amazing, and so we would be filling them in with color. So go to the next slide. So this is based on the Neighborways idea that this was started in Somerville, but you'll see these projects worldwide that have really helped what I say humanize neighborhoods for cars passing through. Next slide. So these are just some images of where you see them in Dorchester, Alston, Somerville. Go to the next slide. The Washington Post recently had articles about the effectiveness of this approach and creating safer streets. Next slide. So we have broad neighborhood support. We've had multiple neighborhood meetings about the idea, about the design, and then you can see that people were actively out kind of doing the mock-up. We did go through 3 rounds of designs. The artist is Sandra Lucente, who lives on Farmcrest, so that everybody has buy-in. Go to the next slide. So 67% of the neighborhood has signed on, and a lot of the non-signers are because we just couldn't catch them at home. I do have the signatures if you need them as part of the process. But you can see the houses that are highlighted in blue are the ones who have signed. And so all of the houses that directly abut and are in the adjacent area are supportive of the project. Go to the next slide. So this is what it will look like. Although one thing that we did learn for doing this draft is that the shapes themselves need to be bigger so that the colors are appropriately spaced. But this is kind of the general conception, and you can see, the fog lines, although they have already deteriorated, but there will be a gap in between the image and the fog line so that the fog line is clearly visible. And so here's the color scheme. I'm not the best photographer, but this was the winning paint scheme. And in case anybody would like to see it, those are the actual samples. And we're working with Sherwin-Williams. The neighborhood has raised over $400 for this project, but Sherwin-Williams is willing to support us in some way, shape, or form. I think they wanted to know that you all support the project going forward before we finalize what that actually looks like. And the neighborhood will raise any difference that there may be. And so the next step, based on the support of the traffic safety group, and we are so grateful for Ms. Page and Mr. Moreau from the engineering department who really made this possible and worked with us on this for, I've been working on this for 2 years. So we're here to seek your approval to actually do the installation. I think you have received the document that has the requirements. We would work with the police to have a detail to ensure everyone is safe and make sure we have the right paint mixture and all of that stuff. But I'm very happy to answer any questions that you might have about the project.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, any questions or comments from the board? Ms. Berry.
I'll just comment and say, I love this, but I'm just wondering, will those colors have enough differentiation between the pavement? I mean, is the pavement kind of bleached out? New pavement's new, it's darker, and then it kind of bleaches.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was one of the concerns of the traffic safety group. So before they purchased the paint, engineering will look at the actual paint samples first, but that was a concern.
Thank you.
And that's actually why there's a space too between the fog line and the artwork.
Thank you, Ms. Berry. Mr. Patter and then Mr. Sandy.
So I agree with Ms. Barry. I think this is great, and look forward for the completion The one issue I have really isn't about you, but was about those fog lines having faded out so quickly. This isn't the first painting job on town streets that we've noticed where after a few months, the lines have faded. I hope we will be repainting and taking issue with our contractor on inadequate lifespan.
I would agree with that. Mr. Sandine.
I was going to say the same thing. So I was also kind of wondering what the town or the neighbors thought these good, wonderful colors you picked are going to, how long they're going to last and how often we're going to have to repaint.
Yeah. What I have heard from other communities is that this is like the annual like block party activity is to refresh the colors. Given where we live and the salt that goes on the street, this is where plows pile up. We are aware and know that we'll be maintaining this.
Thank you. So I will just echo, I also think it's great. I love the idea. I had the same concern about that Ms. Berry expressed about the contrast. I'm concerned that it will be beautiful, but not noticeable enough to achieve its intended goal. I don't know whether that just having, some sort of a bright fourth color that delineates the spaces or something that makes it pop so it's more visible to the driver. Other than that, I think, as I said, I think it's great. Is there a comment? I can't see the Zoom list. Does somebody have, are there any comments? Any comments from the audience? Seeing none, I'm going to move to approve the request of the neighborhood to install a street art project designed as a traffic calming measure consistent with the recommendations and guidelines from the traffic safety group. Is there a second? Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your
Excited to
support.
see it.
Really appreciate it. Yeah. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to wait for Mr. Lucente, but then we are going to move on to our next and final item of the evening, which is discussing the town manager search screening committee process and timeline. Anybody see Mr. Lucente out there? All right, I teed up the topic.
Thank you, Ms. Hay.
All set.
Okay, colleagues, as Ms. Hay mentioned, we are going to move on to our sixth and final item for individual Oh, I think it is. I'm just not close enough, sorry. Our sixth and final item for individual consideration tonight involves the establishment of a timeline and process for selecting applicants for the town manager search screening committee. I'm going to turn this over to Ms. Hay again, even though she just did the last item, to lead the discussion on this and talk to the board so we can come up with a timeline.
So colleagues, I just wanted to discuss briefly how we did a very nice job of ensuring that we recruited a good pool representative of many different parts of our community. And now we need to make sure that our selection process doesn't inadvertently obviate that work. And my concern is that if we do what is our typical process of just individually ranking everyone top to bottom, we could end up with everybody's first choice sort of falling in the same category. And since there's 5 of us and we need 5 members at large, we could end up with 5 people who all come out of the same demographic. Or represent the same cultural group or the same activities. So my thought was we need to make 2 different types of selections. We have a business representative that's a designated seat, and then we have 5 at large. So my thought was that I was going to ask if everyone would make a list with your business designee and a group of 5 who you feel represent the diversity that you're looking for on the committee. And then do that twice. So you're doing your first list and your second list. And the theory was that you have an alternate for each spot so that you have, if we all submit, essentially what we're doing is we're ranking a top 12, which is to get to 6. We're each ranking a top 12. My concern was if we only did the 6 each, we might not have enough crossover to make a single selection. So we could do just everybody does one set of 6. And if it works out when we all submit them to Ms. Prezio, then great, and we're done. If it doesn't work out, though, she already has a second set, and then we can go to where the highest count is among the crossover, still ensuring that we have the diversity. I'm trying not to draw this out too long. That's really the problem. So that's Mr. Lucente and I kind of went back and forth on this about 4 different ways to tomorrow. And this is where we landed. So if you have other thoughts, I'm more than open.
So 2 questions. First, I assume this means we're not sending out a second questionnaire and getting feedback from.
Oh, I'm sorry. We did send out the question. That was not in here. That should have been in here. I apologize. We did send out that questionnaire. Mr. Sandine and I sat with Ms. Shaw, our Chief Equity Officer, and we revised the questions back down to slightly more general information, with the concern that if we got too specific about experience in municipal governance, it sort of had its own inherent bias in the question. So we did ask for information about how any one of the individuals would help us achieve the goal of a diverse community committee. And then we asked what their experience and interaction with municipal governance was in a much more general format. Those answers are due by the end of today. We don't have them yet. They will be coming to you. I apologize. I jumped ahead a step. We will get all of that information. And I think that's in here somewhere, or it was supposed to be in here somewhere. That's entirely possible. It's not. So yes, you will be getting that information tomorrow morning, and then you will have both sets of information, the original applications and the supplemental responses. One other thing that we asked in the supplemental information was about the availability and ensuring, if you are not going to be available for, we're guessing 4 to 6 meetings between now and the end of June, and then, 2 to 3, at least half days, early to mid-August. Please let us know. And so far, only one of the applicants has indicated that that may be a problem for them.
So the second part to my question was, your proposal that we essentially give 2 slates.
Mm-hmm.
I find that a little challenging in that, I will have put together a slate based on what I think are complementary skills, but then the second slate really depends on what the general outcome is of the first round. And if I had someone who I thought would be really good at something, and that person didn't get broad support, I'd be looking for someone else in that slot as opposed to something else. So I think if we're going to do 2 passes, I need to see the results of the first pass first.
Mr. Sandine wanted to comment, and then I'll comment.
So the other thing that I was thinking was, if we're being asked for 2 slates, at least the way I was thinking about it, and I appreciate Mr. Powell's comments, that's an interesting way to think about it as well. I was just thinking I might just give you my top 12, and that would be that. But the other thing I just wanted to say for those folks who weren't aware of Ms. Hay and are sending this questionnaire out, there are 24 responses on the page that we have available to us right now. So we haven't seen all 33 yet, but 24 are up and you can read them.
And there's a separate subfolder on that same page that Ms. Prezio set up for us. So I'm somewhat agnostic on this. I'm just trying to figure out the way to be efficient on this, because we don't want to, we really would like to be able to vote this on the 13th. I'd prefer not to have to push it off to the 20th. And so the idea was that if you turn it around with the information you get tomorrow and you give it to Ms. Prezio on Wednesday, we know on Wednesday whether we have a set. If we don't have a set, then we go to the second slate, so to speak, and or we just do it again.
Ms.
I'm with Mr. On sort of second thought. My first response was I just sent in 12, but after sort of thinking through the logistics of this thing, I would be more along the lines of Mr. Pado, is that if we've already set my second round, I would like to see what the first round conclusions are.
So let's also, Ms. Barry, did you want to comment on this at all? No, okay. I think my opinion is we should take the first round and do a traditional first round and see where they fall, and we cut it off. We decide tonight where the cutoff is on that first round. Is it 10, 12, 15? I wouldn't go much more than that. And then we re-rank based on that, so that we're not trying to rank, because what I can imagine happening is we will be appointing some people to this committee that may have only had 2 votes or 1 vote, or, maybe didn't have a, because there's going to be so many ties, is my point. So the first round isn't necessarily going to get us a clean slate.
Well, if we each put in 6 names.
Mathematically, I think we're going to end up with some tied numbering.
Mm-hmm.
So rather than us picking 6, we rank all 33, take the rankings like we traditionally do, and pick the first, top 15 or 16, wherever a natural cut is for, I say natural, meaning if there's a tie, on number 15, they say 15 and 16 go, and then we rank that as the second round and live with whatever the results are. And I know the concern is,
what if that ends up with every single member, somebody who had their experience is the HDC, and we have nobody who has done the schools, and nobody who's ever done anything with any of our cultural groups, or that's the risk. That's why I'm trying to get at, if we give mixed sets, and I find it hard to believe that the 5 of us would, and the business line is a separate one. So if the 5 of us each put together 5 people, I strongly doubt that's going to be 25 people. I think there will be overlap, and the worst case scenario then is that we then re-rank say it's 20 people, and we figure out a balanced set.
So maybe we each bring our slate of 5, business plus 5. And then the second round is for us all for that to be the selection pool.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be, as Ms. Lucenti said, setting an arbitrary cutoff point, it would be only those candidates who had at least a support of 1 member. And, and if we had like a majority vote for the same slate, we could stop there on the first round.
That's why the second one says as necessary, because I was trying to preserve that option for.
I actually think that approach works, Mr. Pado. I think that solves the problem. So what I'm hearing, and Ms. Hay, you want to make sure you're hearing it too. What I'm hearing is we will each take the candidate pool, we'll pick our business representative, and then separately the 5 candidates we each think should be in that will get compiled by the office. If magically we all pick the same 5 people, we're done. But if not, which I assume we won't necessarily do that, we will send that, and anyone who's on that set will go back to the board for ranking.
That works, I think. And then so 2 pieces to that. One is that tomorrow morning you're going to, get the email from Ms. Prizio, although as Mr. Sandin pointed out, you can start, if we get out of here early enough tonight, you can start reading some of them this evening, but you will need to submit that all by Wednesday morning. So you'll only have a 24-hour turnaround on it, because if we need to do the second round, she needs to put all that together and get it back out to us. So that's our deal.
Everybody seems like they're able to do that.
Okay. And then the only other thing I would request, and Mr. Sandin, you and I can talk about this if you want, but I'm going to assume that second round will give us the balance that we need. But we may need to have some authority that if there are, close numbers on votes between people and somebody would fill a niche that is not otherwise represented. I wonder if we need to leave opportunity for that. I don't know. We can talk about it. We'll hope we don't need to.
I'm not quite sure I understood what Ms. Hay was proposing, but I think that comes to when we have the meeting on the 13th. We would be looking at the slate and say, yes, I'm voting for the slate because I think it's adequate, or if I don't think it has the right coverage, I would vote against the slate and say, we need to, we're missing somebody in this area.
That works.
Okay, all right.
Is their homework.
Great, thank you all for that time and discussion. So before we move on to our executive session, I'd like to announce that the next regularly scheduled work session of the Select Board will be held on Monday, May 13th, 2024 at 6:30 p.m. via hybrid participation. And our next regularly scheduled meeting of the Select Board will be held on Monday, May 20th at 6:30 p.m. via hybrid participation. Before we move into executive session, Ms. Barry.
Mr. Lucente, my husband is still employed by the town for I don't know how many days, but he could tell you exactly how many days and hours. So I'll be recused from this executive session.
Thank you, Ms. Barry. I move that the Select Board go into executive session under exemption 3 to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining in regards to the Building Maintenance Division Union, AFL-CIO Mass State Council number 93, Local 1703, and Public Works Union, AFL-CIO Mass State Council number 93, Local 1703. I think I said that twice. And not to reconvene an open session as the adjournment of both the open session and executive session will occur at the end of the executive session. Further, as chair, I declare that an open meeting discussion may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position and litigating position of the town. And by a roll call vote to go into executive session, Ms. Hay?
Yes.
Mr. Paddo?
Yes.
I vote yes. Mr. Sandine?
Yes.
Okay. By a vote of 4-0, we are now going to join the executive session Zoom link.